Hi, sweet ones. This is Grandma Kitty. Tonight, I want to tell you about the case of Suzanne Simpson, a loving mother, a hardworking woman, and someone everyone thought was living the perfect life. But behind those beautiful family photos and bright smiles, a dark truth was quietly growing, one that would shake an entire community to its core. For 51-year-old Suzanne Simpson, life in the lovely town of Olmos Park, Texas, seemed almost like a dream. She was a hard-working real estate agent who helped families find their forever homes, a proud mother to 4 beautiful children, and one of those women everyone adored, always smiling, always kind. People said Suzanne had a heart that could light up any room. But one quiet October evening, after attending a fancy little gathering at an exclusive private club, Suzanne vanished without a trace. Neighbors later said they heard strange screams coming from the woods behind her home. The next morning, her husband called the police, and weeks later, investigators learned something that sent chills down everyone's spine. Months before she disappeared, Suzanne had quietly told her banker, "If I ever go missing, look for me in a lake." Suzanne was one of those go-getters who never did anything halfway. She went to the University of Texas at Austin, smart as a whip, and started out working in technology before she found her true love, real estate. And oh my, did she shine there. For over 10 years, she worked with one of the top property firms in San Antonio, helping families find their dream home. Her co-workers used to say she was tireless, cheerful, full of life, and always the first to lend a helping hand. She had this way about her, you know. Folks said there were no bad days for Suzanne. She carried sunshine in her smile. She was warm, open-hearted, and the kind of person who'd remember your birthday even if you forgot hers. But when she wasn't working, she was out running. That woman could run like the wind. She'd finished more than 20 marathons and even qualified for the Boston Marathon. And that's no small thing, let me tell you. Running wasn't just a hobby for her, it was her peace. Every morning, before most folks had poured their first cup of coffee, Suzanne was out there on the road, chasing the sunrise in her own kind of freedom. Outside looking in, the Simpsons seemed like they had it made, both working in real estate, well off, respected. The picture of success. But, as we all know, sometimes what looks perfect from the sidewalk can be a very different story behind closed doors. Brad was a tall, commanding man, handsome, charming even. But he carried a dark temper and more trouble than he liked to admit. Sure, he worked in real estate and construction too, but he had a string of failed companies, unpaid debts, and lawsuits that just never seemed to end. Folks who knew him said he was jealous, controlling, and could change his mood like the weather. Friends later told police that Brad kept tabs on everything Suzanne did. He tracked her phone, sometimes even took it away completely. And when the kids asked where Mama's phone went, he'd just say she misplaced it. One friend said he was the kind of man who had the most important part of Suzanne's life. Wasn't her career or the big houses she sold, it was her family. She was a mama through and through. 4 beautiful children, from college age all the way down to kindergarten. Folks called her a supermom, and they meant it. Always smiling, always on the move, she could juggle school pickups, sports games, and dinner on the table without ever losing her calm. Her oldest girl was studying fashion design overseas, and Suzanne was just bursting with pride. Everyone who met her said the same thing. She was one of the kindest, most genuine women you'd ever hope to meet. Now, Suzanne and her husband, Brad Simpson, had been married for over 20 years. They lived in this charming old bungalow in one of Texas's prettiest little neighborhoods, Olmos Park. You know, the kind of place where folks wave at you from their porch and know which dog belongs to which house. Quiet, safe, and neighborly. From the Thed to know everything she did every minute of the day. 2 months before Suzanne disappeared, she finally opened up to her personal banker. She said Brad had become physically abusive and controlling in ways that made her feel trapped. That poor woman looked terrified. The banker remembered one thing most of all. Suzanne leaned in close and said, "If I ever go missing, look for me in a lake." Suzanne's mother, Barbara, had started to worry too. She knew there'd been at least one violent argument between her daughter and Brad. She'd even made plans for Suzanne and her youngest child to come live with her until things calmed down. But before they ever could, Suzanne was gone. It was a Sunday evening, and Suzanne looked lovely that night, a short, dark dress, tan heels, her sandy blonde hair pulled halfway back. She and Brad took their little girl to a fancy event at the Argyle, one of those private old dining clubs in Alamo Heights where everything sparkles and everyone knows your name. But witnesses said the evening turned ugly. The couple started arguing, and it wasn't quiet. Later, their daughter told a school counselor that her daddy had pushed Suzanne against a wall, hit her in the face, and hurt her arm. Suzanne left the party around 8:30 with their daughter. A little while later, cameras caught them at a grocery store, moving slow, quiet, like they were holding their breath. Around 9 o'clock, Suzanne called a close friend to say she was on her way over. At nearly the same moment, she phoned her mother and told her Brad had hurt her again. Her neck, her back, and her arm were all sore. At that very same time, Brad got on their phone account and shut off her cell service completely. Cameras showed Suzanne arriving safely at her friend's house not long after, but by a little after 10, her phone's location showed she'd returned to the family home, and that was the last time it ever sent a signal. Between 10 and 11 that night, a neighbor across the street heard shouting outside his window, the kind of shouting that makes your stomach twist. He looked out and saw Suzanne and Brad in the front yard. She was trying to get away, and he was pulling her back, holding her down. She broke free and ran toward the woods beside the house, but Brad chased after her into the dark. The neighbor went inside to grab a flashlight, and that's when he heard it. 2, maybe 3 screams coming from those trees. Then silence. Those were the last sounds anyone ever heard from Suzanne Simpson. Around midnight, that same neighbor heard Brad's truck start and drive away. It came back an hour or 2 later. Investigators would later find out that around 11 that night, Brad started switching his phone on and off, locking it over and over again, the kind of thing people do when they don't want their movements tracked, and he kept doing it all the next day. This is where the story starts giving you goosebumps. It was midnight, just a little over an hour after those awful screams echoed through the trees, when a grocery store camera caught sight of Brad's truck gliding through the parking lot. And guess what was sitting right there in the back? A big old ice chest, plain as day, sitting in the cargo bed. By sunrise, around 7 in the morning, Suzanne's phone lit up for the very last time. That signal placed it in a business parking lot not far from their neighborhood in Olmos Park. Then it went silent, never pinged again. About 8 o'clock, a school camera nearby caught Brad dropping off his little girl like nothing had happened. And there it was again, that same ice chest, plus 2 white trash bags tied up neatly with red string sitting in the back of his truck. Around 9 that morning, another camera, this time at a drive-through over in Kendall County, picked up what investigators later said might be the most important footage in the entire case. Brad's truck was carrying 3 big white trash bags, a heavy-duty garbage bin, that same ice chest, and something bulky, all wrapped up tight in a blue tarp. And on top of that tarp, a metal firewood rack, like he was trying to keep whatever was underneath pinned down. The police later wrote that it looked exactly like how some criminals try to hide or move victims without being noticed. Not long after, around 10 in the morning, Brad's phone showed him over in Bourne, Texas, at a home improvement store. Cameras caught him buying 2 bags of quick-dry cement, one of those orange construction buckets with a lid, a box of heavy-duty garbage bags, a bottle of disinfectant spray, and bug repellent, all paid in cash, which wasn't like him at all. Outside the store, he even stopped a man in the parking lot and asked where the nearest dump was. Then, poof, turned his phone off again. Investigators later called it lockdown mode, the kind of thing folks do when they're hiding their tracks. Between 10 and 11, his phone popped up near the county dump. A few minutes later, cameras at a gas station caught him buying fuel and 2-gallon jugs of water. And those 3 trash bags that were in the truck earlier, gone. Still there, though, were the tarp, the bin, the rack, and the ice chest. Oh, and Brad had changed his shoes, traded his sandals for dark cowboy boots. After that, his phone showed him driving west toward Bandera, slipping into Medina County, where he stayed for about 15 minutes, still turning that phone on and off the whole time. By almost 2 in the afternoon, an automated license plate reader spotted his truck heading back toward Bourne. The blue tarp was gone, and the rack had been moved. At 3 o'clock sharp, the school called home. Suzanne hadn't come to pick up her little girl, something she never missed. That was the moment people started realizing something was terribly wrong. A little after 3, Brad finally showed up to get his daughter. The camera showed only 2 things left in that truck bed now, the ice chest and the big garbage bin. The rack was gone, and just an hour later, around 4, another camera at a car wash caught Brad scrubbing his truck clean. He focused on the driver's side and the back seat. Later, investigators found splatters of dried cement inside and in the truck bed. By then, everything except the ice chest was gone. Through all this, Brad never once called the police. Not that night, not that morning, not even that afternoon. His wife was missing, his daughter had been left at school, and he said nothing. It wasn't until late that night, almost a full day later, that one of Suzanne's friends called him, worried, sick. When she learned he hadn't called anyone, she told him flat out, "If you don't report her missing, I will." 14 minutes later, Brad finally left a voicemail for the police chief. His voice was calm, steady, said he hadn't seen Suzanne since 11 the night before, claimed she'd lost her phone at the grocery store. But detectives already knew that was a lie. Her phone had last pinged at their house around 10, and Brad himself had cut off her service. When police asked him to come in, he didn't show up. Instead, he drove out to his ranch in Bandera County, hiding away from everyone. That same afternoon, he sent a strange text to his business partner, James Cotter. He wrote, "If you're in Bandera, can you get here quick and meet me? I don't have much time." Cotter said he'd be there in about 40 minutes, and Brad replied, "Leave everything in the pump house, especially that gun." Later that night, Cotter sent another message back. "Get over here. I won't tell anyone. You're my brother." When investigators later checked Brad's phone, they found 2 handwritten notes saved that same day. One was called "This Next Life," the other "Last Will and Testament." In them, he apologized for attacking Suzanne once, the year before, and again on the night she vanished. He even called his brother to say sorry for all the trouble he'd caused. At about 1:30 in the morning, officers found Brad driving along the highway near Kendall County. They pulled him over and arrested him for assault, family violence, and unlawful restraint. He had scratches and bruises on his hands and arms, but acted like it was just another day. Calm, quiet, no panic at all. He asked for a lawyer right away and refused to answer a single question. When police searched the Simpson home, they found something chilling, a deep dent in the wall at the bottom of the staircase. It lined up perfectly with what their little girl had told her school counselor, that her daddy had pushed her mama against that wall. That's when the truth started showing itself. As they looked further, the pieces started falling into place. They found 1 bag of cement, even though Brad had bought 2. The heavy-duty trash bin was there, the metal firewood rack, and that same box of black garbage bags he'd purchased, but 4 were missing. The housekeeper told police that the family never used black bags, only white ones with red drawstrings, just like the ones seen in Brad's truck the morning after Suzanne vanished. Inside a locked gun room, officers found a small armory, several firearms, including a short-barrel rifle that wasn't even licensed. That little surprise earned Brad some federal weapons charges on top of everything else. Then, a few days later, on October 9th, the Texas Rangers searched the family's ranch in Bandera County. In a small clearing, they found a burn site, scorched earth, and ashes. Among the ashes were the melted remains of a laptop and several cell phones. 3 of those phones, they confirmed, belonged to Brad. All burned beyond repair. Less than 2 weeks later, police followed another lead, a tip that took them to the home of Brad's old business partner, James Cotter, over in the Dominion, one of those fancy gated neighborhoods. The anonymous tipster told them exactly where to look. Behind a wall-mounted television in Cotter's bedroom, tucked into a hollowed-out section of the drywall, was a fully automatic rifle. Turns out, James had fetched that gun from Brad's private vault 2 days after Suzanne went missing. He was promptly arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and owning a prohibited weapon. His bond, a cool $1 million. Then came December, and with it, the biggest break in the case. A grand jury revealed that Brad had hidden a reciprocating saw, one of those power tools that can slice clean through metal and bone. And before the year was out, investigators confirmed the worst Suzanne's DNA was on that saw. 1 month after she disappeared, prosecutors charged Brad Simpson with murder. His bond was set at $5 million. He faced charges for murder, tampering with a human body, tampering with other evidence, and illegal weapon possession. He was looking at anywhere from 5 years to life behind bars. Now, the lead prosecutor, Casey Sandoval, told reporters something that sent chills through folks around here. He said, "The law doesn't reward people for successfully hiding their victims." And you know what? He's right. But Brad's defense lawyer wasn't giving up easy. That December, he filed a motion asking the judge to toss the whole case, calling it vague and unfair, said without a body, there was no proof of how Suzanne had died. But come April, both sides had their say before Judge Joel Perez. And the judge saw it clearly. Texas law didn't need the exact cause of death, only proof that Brad meant to kill Suzanne, and did. So the motion was denied. The trial would go on. Investigators kept digging. They searched miles of land across 3 counties through the woods, where the neighbor heard those screams, along Interstate 10, and across Brad's ranch. FBI agents, state troopers, local deputies, all combing through brush, dirt, and heartbreak. But by the next October, a full year later, Suzanne still hadn't been found. A spokesperson for the Texas Department of Public Safety said they wouldn't stop not in a year, not in 2. He said sometimes remains are discovered many years later, and as long as there's hope, they'd keep looking. Then, in November, Suzanne's oldest daughter, Chandler, just 20 years old, took to social media and poured her heart out. She wrote, "My father took my mother's life in an act of rage and control. Women in our community have been told to stay quiet. This is the time to speak. Speak for my mom." That brave young woman's words spread fast. Her post and the stories from her siblings led investigators right back to the evidence inside that house, including the mark on the wall that started it all. By the following September, Judge Perez ruled that both sides had everything they needed to head to trial. The evidence filled more than 5 terabytes hours of footage, thousands of phone records, and stacks of forensic reports. These days, Brad Simpson sits in the Bexar County Jail, locked away almost 23 hours a day. His pre-trial hearings are set for January, and jury selection will start in February. The prosecution's case is solid. The neighbor who heard the screams, the saw with Suzanne's DNA, the footage of Brad's truck full of wrapped items, the cement, the trash bags, the burned electronics, the hidden rifle, and those notes where he admitted to hurting her before. Investigators believe Brad attacked Suzanne shortly after she got home that night, between 10 and 11. The neighbor saw them fighting, saw her break free, and run toward the woods. Brad chased her and the screams that followed were the last anyone ever heard from her. They believe he killed her in those woods, brought her body back to the house, and later dismembered her with that saw before disposing of her remains. Every trip he made that night, the dump runs, the cleaning, the cement showed a man trying to erase every trace. Legal experts have called it one of the strongest circumstantial cases in Texas in years. Even now, more than a year later, Suzanne's body has never been found. Her daughter Chandler keeps speaking out, fighting for her mama, and raising awareness about domestic violence. She says she'll keep telling Suzanne's story until justice is done. And the people of Olmos Park, bless their hearts, they're still waiting too. Waiting for closure, for justice, and for the day someone can finally bring Suzanne home. If you, my sweet ones, know anything at all about the disappearance of Suzanne Simpson, the Olmos Park Police Department is still listening. Call them, help them, because everyone deserves to come home.